Peace, family. 19 Keys tapping in. Welcome to the Mind of Keys.
19 Keys tapping in. Greatest thought leader of our generation.
Welcome to the Mind of Keys.
To the Mind of Keys. Tap in.
Did you know that just by learning, you can live longer? There's been a lot of recent published studies that talks about the fact that people who actually have lifelong education, they actually are much happier and they can live longer. So it can actually save your life to get some of these keys. You know what I'm talking about? So today, I'm here to make you a little younger by teaching you something that you didn't know. Now, the moment that you learn some things that you don't know, your brain gets excited. You release a dopamine, the same effect that happens when you have addictive behaviors, right? Or you're in love and things of that nature. Now you get excited, it becomes addictive, right? It makes you feel good. It's a pleasurable moment. It's a great emotional state to be in. So today, hopefully, I can make you feel good with some of this great information. Now, y'all know that I love to go high level with all sort of intelligence and knowledge and information that I give to people. But there's one story that sticks out in my life when people always ask me about how did I get started and what's my mindset and how do I learn. Now, one of the ways that I learn how to learn is just that, learning how to learn. When I used to find myself feeling disappointed with my lack of being able to tap into all of my mental resources, all of my memory, if I found myself to where it felt like I couldn't articulate certain things because the axons and dendrites and electricity in my brain wasn't making those neural connections, those pathways weren't flooded with electricity exciting my mind, then I had to figure out, well, I heard the statistic that they say that the average person only uses 10% of their brain. Then I realized that was a lie, that was never true. They said you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? So then you start thinking, well, maybe I'm too old. I'm not 18 anymore or 19. And so what I realized is that none of that was true. You can always teach an old dog new tricks. You just have to teach him new tricks in a new way. So it's the same thing with the adult brain. After the age of 25, the way that you learn changes, right? Our pattern recognition changes from when we're 21 years old. And then when we become 25, we start to move into a wiser thinking. We start to make more broader connections, casting lights on large subjects, right? Finding more wisdom in the information and experiences that we go through. Now, if you join the BWO, which you have to be in order to be in the Mind of Keys, you're getting all sort of new information on stocks, family banking blueprint, digital real estate, marketing, branding, you name it. A lot of this can be overwhelming for the average person that wants to learn, but they feel like it's hard for you to process all of the information. So today, I want to teach you how to learn, right? And I'm going to be diving into the different types of intelligence, how the brain works, but specifically I want to give you two different methods that you can utilize so that you can learn your subjects a little easier and they can get into your long-term memory. So we're going to dive right in. So there's two types of thinking that I want you all to focus on when you're trying to learn. And the first one is very straightforward, right? And that's focused thinking. We utilize all our concentrative mental powers to focus on the subject at hand, to try to pull out and be attentive to the most important information and try to download that into our minds, right? Concentration and passion is very powerful. If you can concentrate all of your forces like a laser, you can produce a lot of things into reality. When we're utilizing this way of thinking, we got a one-track mind. You understand me? We're only here on this subject. We're not making too many connections. We're utilizing the prefrontal cortex, which is an area of the brain that commits itself to focus on whatever it's paying attention to. And this is important for human beings to be able to have that power, right? It can be dangerous if you can't focus and you're constantly distracted and your mind cannot commit to a subject, right? You have ADD, you're everywhere all over the place. So being able to utilize the focus method is what most people operate on, right? And they're learning a new subject. They're sitting there, they're focused, they're concentrated, they're trying to hear every single thing, and they're trying to be right here in the moment. But of course, now we exist where we have our phones, we have our extenuous things that take away our minds sometime, and it'd be hard for us to focus, so we don't always have the power of utilizing all of this focus mode thinking, right? So if you're sitting there trying to learn options, or you're trying to learn graphs and trading in this new social media world and all of this information that we're giving you, and you're sitting there focusing, and afterwards you feel like, maybe I grasp 1% of that, right? Then you need to go and move on to this other method as well. And I'm going to tell y'all, for me, I utilize both methods. You understand me? When I know more about a subject, then I can focus on it, and then I can add layered on top of what I already know. But when it's something completely new to me, then that's when I got to go to diffuse thinking. Diffuse thinking is being a little distracted, actually, because you're making broader connections to learn a subject. Think of it like this. If you have a flashlight, focus thinking is to be able to focus and cast your light in one area very strongly. Diffuse thinking is taking that same flashlight and casting it over a broad area. Not in the one specific area any strongly, but it's hitting all areas, allowing you to make connections that normally weren't there at first. So when you're learning a new subject, it's going to be harder for you to utilize focus thinking because you don't have anything to connect the dots to. Some people grade it to like a pinball machine, right? You have a pinball machine, and the pinball is hitting certain areas in the brain, right? It's probably going on one particular pattern way. It's going here, 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 because these where you have very strong neural networks, very strong neural connections already in your brain, right? If you have weak connections, then that focus won't work. So if you're trying to learn something like options, you don't have anything in your brain to connect it to that's similar to what you're trying to learn. So you have to start learning new patterns and adding them on top until you can start making connections. So you're going to utilize diffuse thinking. This is a more relaxed state of learning. Sometimes you have to distract the mind, allowing the brain to create connections in a broader sense, and then forming it until you have stronger connections. And we're going to go into the way this works, right? An distracting and diffuse way of thinking, what I like to do when I'm learning something, right, is, let's say, even learning this subject, I would stop here and then I would research something that has something to do with the brain. I would stop here and I would research something that has something to do with some new scientific developments on neural connections. So therefore, I'm making these broad connections and my mind is starting to develop patterns. Then I also want to get into a more relaxed state. So whether it's me taking a hot shower, that's one of the types where our brain is so relaxed, it can actually get into our long-term thinking. When we take hot showers, we're relaxed. That neocortex in our brain, you understand me, can now start to work for us. So in that, you want to do activities, you want to take breaks, because then you're allowing your brain to work, right? Instead of just focusing on the subject, I don't get it. No, I'm going to take a break. I just tried to learn something new. My brain is now making connections while it's being distracted, right? And I'm doing something else. And then when I come back and pick up that subject, I now have stronger connections to work with, right? Then I may be able to focus a little more on the subject at hand and the most pertinent parts of the information that I'm trying to connect. With focused thinking, your brain processes very specific information deeply. With diffuse thinking, the brain analyzes much more information at once, but in less depth. Just like flashlights that I talked about will take you out of the dark, both modes of thinking will help you understand the subject better. Which one will work better for you simply depends on whether you want to see the big picture or the small details. Are you working to understand the concept, or you're trying to get some of these layers of thoughts, right, so that you can add on to what you already know and you feel like that's your best way of learning? So if I'm learning options, and this is the way I like to go in a broader sense, right? I want to learn the language of any subject that I get into, right? If I'm learning options, I want to know, what is a delta? Sometimes I might even go a little abstract and learn, what was the history of it? Why do they call it the delta? What's the root word of it? So now my brain is making connections. I have a little neural pathway over there for delta, right? That delta that I just learned is connected to options, right? So now my brain has something to work with. Now I know what an option is. It's basically an assurance for a stock, right? I had to put it into a concept of something that I understood. So I'm making these broader connections rather than focus on exactly what it is, step by step, what I need to know, what I need to learn. No, my brain has to make connections so there's a web of activity that I can draw from. Which one is ultimately better? As it turns out, neither. While these two modes may seem to work in opposition to each other, both are required in order to master a topic or make progress on a difficult project. After all, when you are learning something new, you need to understand both context for the information, diffuse, and the specifics of the subject, focus, right? So you're getting the context, the concept, that's the diffuse thinking, getting a roundabout larger picture understanding, and then you need to know the details, that's the focus. So what are options? It's a way where you can make money on both sides of the market, utilizing calls and puts, right? That's the concept of it. Now you need to get into the details. I need to know what a delta is, right? I need to know how to understand my orders when I'm putting them out there for 2023 contracts. I need to know the details of how many stocks are in one contract so I can understand the correlation of how it can cover 100 stocks. If I got 100 stocks of Zoom or Facebook, I get one contract, it can cover those 100 stocks. So if it goes down, I can still make money. Now that's the concept, right? You need to know the details on how to do it, how to get it done. So both concepts work for you, right? Alternating between focus and diffuse thinking is the best way to master a subject or solve a difficult problem. First, we must use the focus mode of thinking to understand the basics of a topic without any distractions. Then we use the diffuse mode to passively internalize what we have learned and make connections to other things we already know. Afterwards, we go back into focus mode and pare down the connections that we made to the best, most helpful ones. Once you have repeated this process a few times, the information will really stick. In fact, too much focus really can be a bad thing when it comes to problem solving. The longer we keep our brains in focus mode, the more we experience tunnel vision. Outside the box thinking becomes impossible, right? And y'all know I'm big on creative thinking. Creatives can't just sit there and just focus. You're making these connections because why? You're creating things that don't exist. You're making things right now. So in your brain, you want to always connect the subject to something that's similar to it. If you have nothing similar, you have to start from scratch, right? So you have to build up the building blocks themselves. Okay, so once you have repeated this process a few times, the information will really stick. In fact, too much focus really can be a bad thing when it comes to problem solving. The longer we keep our brains in focus mode, the more we experience tunnel vision. Outside the box thinking becomes impossible. This phenomenon known as the Einstellung effect. Before I move forward with that, this is what I would do if I was learning a new subject like you all are. I would look at what is the Einstellung effect. Even though I want to tell you it, I want to know the history. Where does it come from? It allows me to make connections that even the teacher is not telling me about, creating a much stronger learning process, right? So now that I don't just know it from understanding the concept, I know it from being able to teach the concept. This phenomenon known as the Einstellung effect removes our ability to reset the parameters or premise of the problem and blocks creativity. That's why when you're feeling stuck or frustrated with a topic, it's best to take a step back, take a break to let diffuse mode run a while. Too much diffuse thinking, on the other hand, will prevent you from ever getting the details of anything straight, right? So if you're only knowing the broader, you can explain to somebody, yo, this is the concept. Yo, I'm in the BWO. We do all this wealth building activity. But they say, okay, well, what are y'all learning? That's where you have to focus in, give them the details, the step-by-step. We're learning wealth building strategies. We're learning digital real estate. We're learning auctions. We're learning stocks. We're learning futures. We're learning binary. We're learning how to trade commodities. We're learning how to get backed by gold. We're learning the money markets. That's when you have to go into the details and you have to focus a bit, right? So too much of one is not too good because you will have people that's spacey with all these concepts but can't boggle down any focused details whatsoever. All right. As it turns out, our brain probably has two modes for good reasons. We need them both in order to really process information that comes our way. So take advantage of them both when you're learning to see better results. If nothing else, you finally have a scientific excuse to take a nap you want, right? Because rest is important. This is also part of the reason why Brainscape is such an effective study tool. It allows you to study hard in your spare time, then really easily to your daily activities to allow your learning time to sink in. So when you're learning something new, right, and you get stuck, it's okay. It just means you're learning. It's a part of the process. Taking a nap, taking a break, taking a run is extremely important. The ability to be able to distract your mind, right, allowing it to grow these new connections. Because when you focus, it's like you're overworking your brain, right? And when you distract your mind, you allow your brain to work. So now it can go to work in these connections. A lot of people don't have great memories because they don't get great sleep, right? Either you oversleep or you get little sleep. So it's important that you get your rest. So as you're learning a new subject, make sure you're getting a lot of rest that night. And make sure you don't eat before 10 o'clock, right? Before the invention of all of these lights, we used to get all our blue light from the sun, right? And the light basically feeds the body the information, telling it the sleep cycles, telling it the regular times when it's supposed to be hungry, supposed to be more focused. It puts our body in this natural attuned cycle. That's when our body is at its best attuned, it's fresh. You wake up in the morning, you are clear-minded. So when you go to sleep, you're allowing your brain to clean itself, to wash over the ridges of the brain, right, that builds up neurotoxins throughout the day. You're allowing your long-term memory, right, to combine. So when you wake up, you have fresh new information. Your brain is changing every time that you learn, right? You have these dopamine connections that happen in your brain. You have what they call dendrites and axons that are connecting, which are literally building your brain new thoughts, new pathways for you to think, right? So when you learn a new subject, you're literally changing your brain. When I say that I want to change your mind, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Changing the structure of your brain. Once your brain is changed, you will never think the same. So every time you learn something new, you're becoming a new person, right? Now that's dope. If you want to become a new person, learn something new, which is why I always say the quickest way to add value into yourself is to learn something new. It also helps ward off things like Alzheimer's, right, and early set dementia. So learning is a very healthy process because in comparison, those who don't learn die early. So listen, I want y'all to live a long life. I want you to be able to process the information, and I want you to study the type of learner that you are. And some of the next lessons that I'm going to go into, I want to go into the different type of intelligences. Specifically like myself, I utilize deductive reason, abductive reason, inductive reasoning. Now, most of us have heard of deductive reasoning, but what are the other two? Once I was able to learn these, I was able to increase my process of learning and thinking. I also wanted to understand that how does my brain changes over the time when I'm 25 versus when I'm 30 versus when I'm 35 versus when I'm 40 versus when I'm 50 and 55, right? You're never an old dog. You just have to learn things a new way, right? Each level, you're growing into someone new. You're actually becoming younger in my perspective because you've never actually been to that age before, right? If you were going downward to an age that you've been before, that would be an old age because you've been there before, right? You've already experienced 5, 10, 15, 20, some of you are 25, 30. Some of my old heads are up there in the 40s. Now, if you was to go back to 16 years old, that would be an old age for you, right? You see the concept? So once you get to 30, that's a new age. Once you get to 50, that's a new age. Once you get to 60, that's a new age. So we're all developing new brains, new ages. The way our brain develops, the way we see patterns, the way we see wisdom, the way we move about, we care about others in a different way. So never see yourself getting old. Always see yourself getting to a new age. As the world progresses, we don't say that the earth is hella old. We say that we're moving into a new age, a new time, a new dawn, and a new awakening of your mind. We're moving into a higher consciousness and a higher elevation. This is the time where all of you all get to tap in. You get to continue to become better men and better women. And with these techniques of learning how to learn, you can start processing information much faster, which allowing you to become more effective on your road. A lot of you all get the information. Everybody can be given the same information. But if one person is better at learning, guess what? They're going to go further. If one person has a mindset to where they don't allow nothing to stop them. They say, well, Keys, there's some things I don't know. But that doesn't become their blockade. They say, okay, well, what is my process to getting over things that I don't know? Okay, well, sometimes I'm going to Google. I'm going to take a course, right? I'm going to ask a friend. I'm going to read a book. It's never, oh, well, since I don't know, I'm not going to go in that area. No, you commit yourself to the process of learning. That's how we grow. So, one of the things is the law of practice, and this is what you should all understand, right? And the law of practice simply says that we become good at whatever we practice. It's very simple, right? How many of you all practice? If you was playing basketball, football, sports, or any other thing, you would know that you got to practice, right? But how many of you all practice training your mind? How many of you all practice understanding your sleep cycles, understanding how to learn? Like, where's your practice and your methods that you utilize to increase your mindset and your behavior? I'm going to ask y'all a second. What is focused thinking? What is diffuse thinking? Not from my perspective. Put it in your own thoughts. Once you put something in your own thoughts, you own it. They become your own thoughts. Right? Do not understand it from the way that 19 Keys teaches it. Do not understand something from the way Chris Cole teaches it, or Brother Ben X, or J. Taylor Jacobs. Understand it from the way that you're supposed to learn it. Right? So therefore, you can teach it to somebody else. Peace, family. This has been 19 Keys, Mind of Keys. I hope you all learned something, and if you don't, utilize focus and diffuse thinking so you can learn better. Peace.
19 Keys tapping in. Greatest thought leader of our generation.
Welcome to the Mind of Keys.
To the Mind of Keys. Tap in.
Go to blackworldorder.com. Become an official member, y'all. Peace.
Infinite wealth strategy.